Hey, gang. Time to wrap up chapter 5. So we left off with some gender role theory, and let's get a little deeper into it. So now we're talking gender role socialization. So if you get the social learning theory, the Bandura and the Bobo doll and all that stuff, reinforcement and observation and punishment, you get gender role socialization theory. We're just, we're looking around society and we're seeing what men and women do. What roles do they segregate into? How do they behave? How do they solve their differences? How do they romance and the whole bit? And you know which one you are. You know you're a dude human or a chick human, and you look at other dude humans or other chick humans, and you associate their behavior to you, and you act like that. Then you see people either punished or rewarded for the way they're acting, and you tend to do the things that you see rewarded more than the things you see punished. And that's not perfect. We certainly will do things that have no apparent reward if we see someone also do the thing who's like us. It's just more important that they're like us. But we might be a little bit discouraged if we see punishment, and a little bit encouraged if we see reward. Okay, so the basic movie script. Where do we get so much of our gendered information? It's from mass media, as much as from the people around us just doing what they do. So what's the basic movie script? It goes something like this. First of all, there are many more parts for men than there are for women, and the parts for men are much more interesting, meatier roles that require actors and not models. Uh, why? Well, men just won't watch films about women. If you make a film about women, it's going to fail, sometimes violently. Hmm. Women, however, will watch films about men. So if you put men in your films, they're going to sell. If you put women in your films, they're just not going to sell. Men in the movies are going to interact in generally stereotypical ways. Why? Well, we punish men who don't behave in gender stereotyped ways. We don't like them. The more lines you cross and the further you go, the more nobody wants to see a movie about you. Someone in the movie says the line, "I will end you," in a tough guy voice like that. And there's going to be some muggle dueling for the non-Harry Potter people. That's fighting, but with hands instead of magic ones. Um, Shooting and stuff like that, car chases. There are two female characters in the whole bloody movie. One is a love interest, and we see her naked at some point, and the other one is kind of a minor character, running a desk or whatever. And the dominant male in the movie gets the girl in the end. That's the basic movie script. You can deviate from the basic movie script, but the more steps you take away from it, the more your movie is a flop and a failure, panned by critics and audiences alike. Okay, and what do you want to do? Like, movies are for profit. They're not for society. They're not for social good or change or anything like that. They're for making profit, and so there just is no incentive to do things better. Um, yeah, we have Wonder Woman, and we have Wonder Woman 84. I guess people didn't like as much, but the first Wonder Woman and the Black Panther movie, uh, Wakanda, those actually did really, really well at the box office. And they didn't take too many steps away from, I mean, I obviously not too many because they did very, very well. They took just enough steps away. They included people in a way they'd never been included before, audiences included in a way they'd never been included before. So it shows that we're getting to a point where you can maybe push the envelope a little bit more than you could in the past. And the more that we push those envelopes, the less people demand that same basic movie, and you can push the envelope further. So let's talk the masculine mystique. This is a book, and the masculine mystique is men are tough, violent, somewhat psychopathic towards women. Women are things; they're commodities to be obtained and won. Competitive, and really not much regard for body integrity, which means risk taking. That's the dude on the local news not wearing a mask in public, and you ask him why, and he goes, well, I'm not concerned about coronavirus. Well, yeah, because you're a dude and you just have low body integrity. You don't think about the people around you. Cover your face. Um, and like writing on car hoods and just all the drinking and smoking and just all the things that men do that just show a disregard for our health. This is probably the way that I'm most masculine. Is I've never really had too much to live for. I do now, and it's a strange kind of reverse existential crisis where I've started to realize I'm going to live, and so if I'm going to live, I have to make some I have to make some changes. Yeah. So when we're talking the rewards of masculinity, rich white men tend to have more access to the rewards for masculine behavior. That is uh, sort of high regard, high profit kinds of high respect kinds of things. So like lawyers and police and stockbrokers, these are all like competitive, partially. I'm not saying every lawyer or police officer is psychopathic. I'm saying there are more psychopaths on the police force than the general population. Surgeons have to be a little bit psychopathic. Corporate executives, right? The more that you're tough and threatening and competitive, and the more you're willing to get in someone's face and not be rattled when they insult you, like the better you're going to do in all these kinds of professions. Other men, though, men who aren't rich white men, from middle class families. I mean, rich, that's a debatable thing. Billionaires, millionaires, because billionaires are 1,000 times richer than millionaires. Um, Middle class. If you're poor, middle class is rich. Other men, non-rich white men, lower class, non-white men, tend to suffer from the inability to meet those standards. So you can't get away with being violent and psychopathic. You can't get away with disregarding women. You can't get away, uh, whichever thing you can't get away with doing, then you have to sort of up the ante on the other things in order to be sufficiently masculine in society, at least according to the masculine mystique. So I don't know if this is going on, if it ever went on, if it was going on and it stopped, but there's sort of the stereotype of the black man who works out a lot, like really swole black men. And the masculine mystique sort of explained this, and it got into pop culture as black men don't have access to the kinds of status symbols that white men have access to. Money for a house and a fast car and a high profile job. And so, in the absence of that masculinity, the only thing you can left in your control is your body. And so you do control your body and you get swole. And so you have that going for you. But that's amping things up on this one dimension because other dimensions just aren't available. Um, how true is that? That's a really hard thing to throw data around on. So I only bring it up to mention that if you're going around telling people this, the masculine mystique is not really a data thing. It's a book somebody wrote, and that thing is maybe a stereotype. And I'll trust you to filter through your experience and later go through the data and see if that's a thing that's true. Um, so for live class, I like to do this thing for everybody, right? Female type humans. In what ways are you not strictly feminine or not able to be feminine? And for male type humans, in what ways are you not able really to be masculine? And I'm always going to join in on here. I'm never going to tell you to do things I'm not prepared to do. I'm totally prepared to do this. So, like personally, I don't know about cars. I had to buy a car a few years ago, and I went to a dealership, and the sales person who accosted me was a female type human. We went out on a test drive, and so she drove off the lot and then pulled into a parking lot, and then we were going to switch seats. But she doesn't just switch; she goes around the front and opens the hood, and she's pointing at stuff and talking about the engine. I'm like, I don't know what's in there, man. You might as well be pointing at a pile of soup cans or a sewing machine. Why are you showing me this? I don't care about this. she assumed because, I'm big and beardy and stuff, that I would care about cars or know about cars. I do not. Uh, the autism thing, I'm kind of wired to do things backwards. If I'm following a step-by-step process, working on something mechanical, I always have to strip it down halfway through and start over because I've done it exactly backwards and I have to flip it over and whatever kind of thing. I have some muscle dystonia and some asthma, and these are linked to the autism thing. Muscle dystonia, I can work out 4 to 6 hours a day and just look kind of average, right? I just can't get huge and swole. It's never going to happen. So I can't do that. I can't be I can't be the manly man. And lately, getting the arthritis, and my wife helps me open jars because I just don't have the grip that I used to. I'm a pacifist. I don't want to fight. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not even going to intimidate you. Come at me. You'll win. Do it. And look, man, I'm just not willing to sacrifice my emotional life. I like to cry. I mean, I don't necessarily feel pleasure in crying, but I do because I know that my efforts to self-program into humanity and out of alienation, those are working. God, I'm smart enough to see the scam, and I'm just unwilling to participate in the whole masculine thing. I don't really want any. I don't want any part of it. What makes me feel masculine is when I'm in a therapy room and someone has problems that they're willing to share, and they're just so hurt, and I can hold that for them, right? I can put all that on my shoulders, and I can hold those emotions, share in those emotions. That's when I feel. So are new gender roles possible? I'm going to invite you. Think about all that stuff for yourself. If you're watching the vid, think about all that stuff. In what ways, are you in type, out of type? Are new gender roles possible? Hey, at the psychiatric hospital, we had a juvenile unit, that's teenagers. And it was pretty rough. If you worked the juvie unit, you could plan on being punched in the face at some point, breaking up 2 or 3 fights a day. They did something really unique for a while, like years and years ago. They taught martial arts. They taught everyone karate. All the boys, one of the activities they did every day was teaching martial arts, sparring and all that stuff. And the rates of violence just came way down. They came way down. Because people felt safe. People felt vulnerable. They were looking around at all these other teenage boys who had problems, and they felt threatened. And what men do when they feel threatened is they strike out. They provoke a confrontation and get the confrontation over with and hopefully win it. But teaching everybody to defend themselves, they felt like they were safe, and then they didn't have to resort to violence. They could do other things. They could talk, and they could have brave conversations instead. That really worked. And then people got scared. They hit us all the time. If they hit us and they know karate, yeah, but look, they've stopped hitting you, dummy. But we stopped doing that anyway. What about training women in martial arts? Well, that tends to reduce women's victimhood. The number one predictor of whether a woman will be raped in the future is whether she's been raped in the past. That is, that predators look for people who are vulnerable. And when you feel vulnerable, you kind of set off those salivary glands. And when you feel confident, when you're not scared, you don't walk as furtively. You walk with your head up more and your shoulders back, and you're just more cognizant for the danger areas, and you don't go in there. And teaching women to be big and strong and powerful and know what it feels like to punch a dude in the throat, people stop messing with you as much. What about this? Popular songs. This is it's Brad Paisley It's he didn't have to be, right? And it's Brad Paisley growing up, and his dad's gone, but his mom's dating, and her mom finds this catch who just treats little baby Brad Paisley well. He's a father. He didn't have to be a good father to him. He could have come and gone, but he came and stuck around and took him fishing and taught him about, I don't know, stuff like that. Uh, it's a song that's really nurturing a positive. It's modeling a positive, nurturing masculinity. That's the thing. How about the way that we portray people of color in the media? I haven't noticed a bunch of stuff on Hispanic, Latinx, Asian, but the way that we're treating black men in media has definitely gone from the absolute worst to we're making an effort here now, right? It used to be black men were thugs and killers and gangsters. There's a whole show about it. It was Cops, Bad Boys, Bad Boys. What you gonna do? The Bad Boys was always a white dude arresting a black dude, and he's walking away all shirtless in the handcuffs and getting stuffed. The whole show, the whole show. Um, but now there's this definite and well received effort to show black men holding babies and kissing their wives and being there, learning how to do their daughter's hair, and we're hungry for that. The whole society seems really hungry for that. Not just black people, not just people of color. Everyone seems really hungry for some positive representation of men, of of black men, of everybody. We want that. We want that positive representation. It's happening. It's happening. Does that trickle down when we see all that stuff? Are men more likely to step up and be like solidly nurturing parents to their children? We'll see. Parents, we treat our kids differently. Do you want to treat your kids differently? Doesn't matter. You're gonna. You can do stuff consciously or unconsciously, and I just recommend you do it consciously. Okay, treat your kids differently, but do it consciously. Now you're in charge, and then you can kind of control a little bit how consciously, how differently, or um, why differently. So even if we were able to be totally gender neutral towards our children, they come to us with different concerns because they have different lives. Our daughters are more likely to be concerned about their appearance younger. Our sons are going to be these days just as concerned about their appearance by teenage years, honestly. The right clothes and the right haircut and being hip. Um, like that anxiety marketing has hit boys as much as girls, at least recently. Haven't been around forever, but at least recently that's the case. Boys are more likely to have been in fist fights and have confrontations to work through, and girls are more likely to have, just other kinds of problems. Um, then there's also that pesky double blind problem. Um, what I'm saying is the conscious unconscious thing. You're going to do it unconsciously. That even if you're trying to not treat your kid inside gendered stereotypes and paradigms, you live inside gender stereotypes and paradigms. And when they come to you and your boy says, I was thinking about maybe trying out high heels tomorrow, right? You're schooling your face to stillness, but your kid knows you and they read that and they know that you disapprove, even if you say that you approve. Get it? Um, so, like, this is more about working on yourself than it is about the outward way that you decide to treat people. And just learning is going to do some of that work, and then you have decisions to make. I am not saying you should try to raise a gender children. I have no interest in. I have no interest in that. I guess as a person in society, if I had a moral stake in this, it would be that we try to teach people the least shitty ways to be men and women as we can. So we're maximizing everyone's freedom and agency and safety. And that's the American story. It's an American story. Um, yeah. we treat our kids differently. Men are on average 10% larger than women. So we're not just talking behavior outcomes here. Sometimes we're talking biomarkers, that parietal lobe thing, the language thing, it's biological that men are 10% larger on average. That's everywhere in all times and places. But hey, what if we encourage little girls to eat the way little boys eat? Little girls don't get told to sit down and finish their plate so they can grow up big and strong. Little girls get taught really early, and sometimes in subtle ways, that it's okay for them to leave the table, but not okay for their brother. That they should not clean their plate. It's impolite to the host. You should leave a little so the host knows that you're full. You should. In 1,000 little ways, we disapprove of big, heavy girls and approve of big, heavy boys, whether we want to or not, but especially if we want to. What if we taught girls to eat the way we teach boys to eat? Well, body fat would certainly be a consequence, but might skeletal stature also be a consequence? The answer to that is not completely. This is a hard biological difference. It's in the hormones. But it might diminish a little. That it's not entirely 100%. Nothing is entirely 100% in one category. Get it? Okay. The way that you treat your kids shows up in their body. What about communications? I was too lazy to spell out communications. I'm tired. There's a thing about spatial language because we're obsessed with spatial ability for some reason. Spatial language to boys, we use more spatial language talking to our sons than to our daughters. And that turns into spatial language among boys. Boys are more likely to use spatial language than girls are. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's bidirectional. Maybe it's in our heads that we should do that. Maybe boys just require more specific instructions than girls do. Right? Those lower language capabilities on average at young ages, girls might get clean your room, boys might get pick up that toy and put it in the chest. Now pick up that toy and put it in the chest. Right? Emotions. Girls can be sad but not angry. Boys can be angry but not sad. The way that we talk to our children about their emotions. When boys are sad, we're generally disapproving. When they're mad, we might not be as disapproving. Girls, if they're mad and they backtalk, they're going to get a definitive form of feedback. When they're sad, we're much more likely to be nurturing and understanding. How do we know that? And girls and women and boys and men, right, all the way through life, girls can be sad but not angry. Boys can be angry but not sad. Like your mom probably didn't tell you, "I'm so mad at you right now." She probably said, "I'm disappointed in you." And disappointment is not an angry word. It's a sad word, even though she's mad as hell. How do we know? Two basic ways. One, we can build an androgynous mask, a computer rendering of a face, but with all the sex cues stripped away. And we know it's androgynous when we ask people what sex it is, and 50%, 50%, right? Half of people say it's a dude, half of people say it's a chick. So then we put an expression on its face. We make the androgynous mask a little bit sad. Or we make the androgynous face a little bit angry. And we ask people, again, different groups of people, we ask them, is this a male type face or a female type face? And when the mask is angry, they call it male. And when it's sad, they call it female. We can go the other way. We can have actors portray ambiguous emotions. Maybe the sad is the little droop in the mouth. But the angry is the in the forehead. So you can do both. And we ask people, we get that emotion halfway between angry and sad, and we ask people which it is. And when it's on a female face, they call it sad. When it's on a male face, they call it angry. There we go. The way we're communicating with our children about their emotions has has these long-term outcomes, but society is communicating with us about what we expect from our children. There we are. What about peer groups? We live in a society, and that society has strong central tendencies. So even if you could magically not communicate gender expectations to your children, I'm not even saying you should do that. I'm saying if it were possible, they would not be immune from gender expectations. Your child might grow up in a totally ungendered environment at home. I don't think it's possible because you don't live on the moon. You can only present them with gender neutral toys, but their grandparents are going to send them, whatever thing goes with their apparent sex. Uh, but your friends, their friends and their classmates and their teachers and their bus drivers and the guy reading the news in the morning, they don't grow up in completely ungendered environments, and they also have influence. And children are cruel and stupid. Uh, Look, there's a central tendency among humans to a Bronze Age morality. It's the dominance of the limbic system over the frontal lobes. It's the kill or be killed sort of moral code we're born with, where we hate everyone who's not like us and love everyone who is exactly like us. Um, no universalizing of principles, empathy and fairness not really in it except in specific circumstances. That's baked in. That's our starting programming. We have to do a lot of work as a society to build up the sort of modern morality, which is about empathy and fairness and liberal or libertarian values, classical, not the modern stuff with you have the right to deny service to gay people if you make cakes. That's weird. Uh, Classical liberalism. Um, you have to layer that up. You have to build empathy, build the capacity to reason, because moral reasoning requires reasoning. And so we're born sort of cruel and stupid. Adults don't always set the best examples. We're not out there every day teaching empathy. Kids see what we watch on TV and the jokes that we laugh at and who we vote for. And sometimes we're actively leaning on the wrong side of the moral arc of the universe. Stop it. By 5, children sex segregate. Boys play heroes, girls play house, and girls don't play with boys, and boys don't play with girls. And if you cross the line, you're going to get some definitive feedback from your peers about that. But I know, Derek, it's on average. God, do I have to say it every time? Boys kind of do competition, dominance, the pecking order thing, the wrestling and the chasing and the hitting, the rough and tumble, the muggle dueling. Girls do the role taking, the role play. I'll be the mom, you be the dad. I'll be the shopkeeper, you be the, I don't know, whatever, interstate truck driver. Uh, and a lot of emotional expression, just settings where emotional expression is called for. So a couple of things. Homophily, you like people who like you. You like people who are in your in group. Okay. Propinquity, you like what you know. So I like music from the 80s and 90s, and it's really hard to get music past me that's not from the 80s or 90s. A new song. The problem with a new song is I haven't heard it before, right? The more that I've heard a song, the more that I like a song, even though when I heard it for the first time in 1982 or something, I didn't like it. I didn't like Green Day when Green Day came around the first time. When Green Day was new, I was not a fan. I thought it was whiny and petulant, and it's grown on me. And now, if Green Day comes on, I turn the radio up. Not because I got on board with their moral philosophy or something, just because I've heard it more. You like what you know. What's that to do with gender? Well, Boys with male friends act more male. The more that boys are sex isolated, they're on an island of just boys, the more that they act in stereotypical male ways. They act like who's around, and there's a central tendency in boys, and they gravitate to that central tendency. Girls, a little bit, the more girls are with girls, the more girly they more stereotypically they behave. Um, Boys especially dislike non-conforming boys. Females are a bit more tolerant, but also dislike non-conforming boys more than they dislike non-conforming females. Boys and girls both prefer non-conforming females over conforming females. And when you ask them, it's because of what they're interested in, what they like to do. Because boys want to do the rough and tumble and climb and bike and stuff, and they don't want to be confined into that role of playing house and dolls. Females also feel like that's a debased role. Little girls like the girls who are tomboys more than they like each other. That thing about men will watch movies with men, but not women. Women will watch movies with men or movies with women. Gender neutral schools, there's just a blurb in here about some school in Sweden, and it's just like half a paragraph and nothing specific in terms of references. You are welcome to go research that thing and find out what they're up to out there. Like their one outcome measure really is whether children are cool with people who are not their sex, and they are. And does that have a big impact and play out in society and stuff? Actually, I don't know. I don't think the data is there. I'm not sure it's been around long enough that you can measure social impacts. I think it's the only one doing it. So I don't know. I don't know about any of that. It's just a blurb. Read the blurb. Have fun. At their school, teachers say friends instead of boys and girls. I bet that if they're really trying to do a gender neutral school, that there's way more to it than the way that teachers address their students. I'll tell you this. For me, I avoid any kinds of differentiated labels. I don't do a ton of pronouns because everyone's so different. Yeah. Like ladies and gentlemen is totally by the wayside. Fellow citizens, I don't know if you're a citizen. I've really fallen all the way back to greetings, humans, because that's the one thing I can be sure of. And you take it as a joke, that's great. Fantastic. And I'm serious. That's the one thing I know. We're humans together doing a human thing. There might be dogs listening in on the Zoom chat or whatever, but I'm not talking to them because they can't understand me. At the moment when dogs can understand gender identity, then I'll start addressing greetings, humans and canines. Until then, all right. And I try to talk to people rather than about people. If we're in a class and I need to reference you, I'm probably talking to you with the name that I see on the little screeny deal there. That's what you're going to have to be patient with. Is I don't do names and faces, and so when I see the name of the person talking, and maybe you don't get that opportunity to put the name in that you want to be called by, and I will try to remember. But if you're trying to do a thing, you're not doing a thing, and we'll do our best, and you'll be patient with me, and I'll be patient with you. Is all this good? Is like dodging pronouns and saying humans instead of other stuff? Is that good? I don't know, man. I don't know if it is. I think it's the right thing to do. It's the best I can do, and that's what's happening. Cool, let's talk toys. Here's a meme. I think it's a fun meme. How to tell if a toy is for boys or girls, a guide. Number 1, do you operate the toy with your genitals? If yes, this toy is not for children. If no, it is for either boys or girls. That's funny. Yeah, it's funny. I wish it were simple. The Legos are in the boys section. There aren't Legos in the frilly pink catastrophe of the girls section at Toys R Us. And from quite a young age, boys prefer boy toys, girls prefer girl toys. There's sort of this middle ground of stuff that's not gendered that much, like tricycles and balls. Uh, but even bicycles, there's pink ones and blue ones. You know what I mean? Um, and the girls prefer the pink ones with the frilly handlebars. And the thing is that playing with gendered toys increases stereotypical behavior. The more boys play with blocks and guns and boxing gloves and stuff and action figures, they're dolls. The more the boys act in those stereotypical masculine mystique ways. Playing with boy toys seems to increase preparedness for STEM, those mental rotation tasks in math and whatever, interest in science and so on. Playing with girl toys does not necessarily induce empathy and nurturance and compassion and stuff. Depending on the toy, you might be instead teaching submissive sexual behavior. So playing with Barbies, with the unrealistic body type and the hair things and the My Little Ponies and so on, these might be more encouraging a submissive role in society than being empathetic or nurturing. Is nurturance different from submissiveness? Yes. Yes, it is. Books. Do you remember books? Movies are the YouTube of the previous generation. Or is YouTube the something else of the previous generation? It's been around for a minute. I don't know. It goes so fast, man. Is YouTube the TikTok of Gen X? Oh my God. Let's just say that books are the movies of the ancient world, all right? It's how we did stories and how we got our entertainment on a sunny afternoon. I don't know if you know this, but Lord of the Rings was a book trilogy, in fact, way before there was a movie. Yeah. Starting in the 50s and spread out through the 70s, those books came out. And Snow White and the Huntsman, the Snow White story, when, it's one line at the bottom of each page of a picture book, you can fit it all on one page of Lord of the Rings. They're not both equally valid bases for a movie, let alone a trilogy. Anyway, let's talk about Lord of the Rings because it's completely typical for movies for the period and arguably of this period. First of all, there are 5 female characters really in the entire series, right? Women with more than one line. One is a nag. Bilbo's been away in The Hobbit, and a relative has come to claim his house, and they're auctioning everything off. And she's horrible. There's a girl at the pub, and she's a barmaid at the pub, and Sam gets the girl at the end of the story. He goes away and learns his courage and comes back with the courage to ask her. And he's so like heroic and strong and stuff that she runs off with him. There's an elf, so beautiful that Gimli fetishizes a strand of her hair. She's giving gifts and she asks Gimli, "What would you have of me, Master Dwarf?" And "A strand of your hair." And she gives him 3, and he's just like so. I think there might be a cruel wood elf princess that imprisons all the dwarves at some point in the forest in The Hobbit. I forget, and a wife here and there or something. Then there's Arwen, right? The beautiful maiden, same thing. And for some reason, she loves Aragorn so much that she surrenders her immortality to be with him. literally dies for him and becomes the fair elf queen at the end. I mean, spoiler alert, but this stuff has been around since 1976. Um, Eowyn, the Sword Maiden. Eowyn is a little more interesting because Tolkien's grandchildren, who he was writing for, they noticed that he was a sexist a-hole. Yeah, his granddaughters, he'd read them these stories while he was writing them, and his granddaughters were like, "But granddaddy, there's nobody like us, right? Nobody in your stories has a vagina, granddaddy." Oh, that's right. I wrote like a fellowship of 9 and it's all dudes, huh? So he jams Eowyn in kind of at the end, and she starts off pretty good. She has one scene basically of courageous feminism where she decides not to stay home and like uh, hang out with the women and wait for news of the dead. She rides out and she grabs, I forget if it's Merry or Pippin, and she grabs the little hobbit and they ride out together. We have the right also to fight for our country. She does. And that's the one good scene. And then she fights the Witch King, but she doesn't win because she's a better fighter than the Witch King. She loses because of a stupid pun. Oh my God. No man can defeat me. I am no man. It's a pun. It's not admirable. And then ultimately she's competition for Arwen. She wants to date Aragorn, but Arwen is like an elf and she's inhumanly pretty, and you can't compete with that. It ends up becoming instead a second-rate love interest for a second-rate minor character. It's pathetic. Um, that's books. That's books. That's what books are like. And that's what people want. There's kind of a push to get um, less masculinist books into the hands of readers. So if you're 8 or 12 or 14 or something, the books that you're reading, authorities are starting to be more cognizant of making sure there are books about girls as well as books about boys, girl stories and boy stories, and mixed stories where the gender balance is better and the gender roles are better. And the thing is, if you read boys, 3 stories about boys and 1 story about girls, they start to complain that they're reading girls' stories all the GD time. All they're doing is reading girls' stories. Blah, 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 girls, girls, girls. When are we going to read something about boys? You're like, dude, 3/4 of your education, it's been about boys. You can't listen to 1 story about girls? Come on. Sit down, Derek. Uh, yeah, but that's the thing that happens. Good. Let's move on to social role theory. In social role theory, it's really our functions that matter. It's not so much that we're observing, right? I'm a girl. I know that I'm a girl. My mom's a girl too, and I know what your mom does, cleans the fish tank, and so I'm gonna clean fish tanks. It's less that than men and women get divided into roles, and those roles define your masculinity or your femininity. It's not that women necessarily are collaborative, or I've forgotten the word, communal, and men are agentic. It's that our roles make us communal or agentic. And so women do the nurturing things and therefore are more nurturant. Women do the childcare, and women do the elementary education and the nursing and the fish tank cleaning, I guess, and the flight attending and whatever. But men do the murdery things. They're the soldiers and the whoever. And so men are more murdery. Men are the construction workers, and so I don't know how that's agentic. Is there evidence? Look, there's evidence for all of this stuff. All of it. My favorite lecturer is Robert Sapolsky. And if you get a chance to watch his Harvard stuff, you should do that. What he does though, like his lecture on depression, he starts off with depression is entirely biological, and here are the brain pathways, and here are the neurotransmitters involved, and here's all the evidence. It's absolutely, positively, completely definitive. It's an airtight case. But hang on a second, because it's actually bullshit. And here's why that doesn't actually hold up. And it's entirely, completely, and totally evolutionary, blah, 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 airtight case. Except, no, in fact, it's entirely, completely, totally, and in all other ways sociological, and da 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 da. And here's all the evidence for that. And that's how it is, because that's how science has been done, which is that we try to prove things true instead of trying to prove them false. Okay? So all this stuff has a ton of empirical support. And the truth of the matter is, we don't live in only one sphere. We are reinforced for behaving well, and we do observe the roles, and we do participate in the roles and take on the demand characteristics. Okay? So anyway, as sex parity has increased, roles have equalized. And that's really the chiefest piece of evidence here. We can go from culture to culture and assess their sex parity, and then look at the roles. And we can look at America and see over time, as our sex parity has increased, our roles have equalized. What do we mean? We mean more or less equal access to education, and doing much of the same jobs, or having the opportunity to do the same jobs more and more, and the same kinds of income. Women can be more independent than they ever could in the past, and our roles at home driven not really by male participation, but in having smaller families later in life. And in similar roles, even things like our political differences evaporate. Like we keep expecting female Republican senators to vote against Trump, and it never ever happened. They'd say they were wavering and wishy-washy, and they just go along with whatever thing he was doing. Right? Because it's a role thing. It's not necessarily a sex or gender thing. It's a these are my constituents. This is the way we support them. This is how politics is done. I'm doing this. I already gave you the Carly Fiorina story. So, do men and women value education? Men value education less than women. Unless they're teachers. Teachers all value education, and military members value defense, and women politicians toe their party lines. Okay. Next theory, cognitive development theory. This follows Piaget. So I'm hoping you remember Jean Piaget from Psych 1. Stage 1, appearances. Things are what they look like. If it looks like a dog, it's a dog. If you put on a mask, you are the character whose mask is represented, whatever. So, like, if boys have short hair and wear pants, and they see someone with short hair wearing pants, that's a boy, and vice versa. And like the idea that there's even a body under the clothes hasn't sunk in all the way. By a year and a half, some sex typing is occurring. So children are starting to act like the models in their type. Children have sort of developed the idea that they're a boy or a girl, and they see the models and they pursue those models in their behavior. And preferences start to become rigid, right? There's some anxiety about crossing type. Oh, John, I got a kilt for you. That's a skirt. Boys don't wear skirts. Oh, yeah, refuse to wear it. Boys wear green shoes, not blue shoes. Oh. Male and female are transitive properties, not permanent characteristics, until about the age of 7. And this is a centration error, right? What Piaget called centering or centration. The basic version of which is I'm going to ask you how many coins are on the table. I'm going to put 7 coins on the table, but like sort of close together, like this 7 coins, right? And then I'm going to go, how many are there? Right? Maybe you can't count to 7. But then I'm going to spread them out like this. I'm going to go, now are there more coins or less or just the same? And a kid, a 5-year-old might go, There's more. Look, there's more coins now. Because you're unable to focus on the salient feature of the problem, which is the number of coins, not the space that it takes up. It looks like more, and therefore it is more, and there's no difference between those things, right? Like if we test people for coronavirus, there will be more coronavirus. Literally be more coronavirus. If we don't count it, it doesn't exist because things are what they look like. Who are we talking to with those kinds of arguments? This centration error never quite leaves us. The inability to focus on the salient point of an argument is it's destroying us. We're going to literally die because 30% of the population can't do it. Global warming is killing us now, not in the future. We should do something about global warming. Won't that be expensive? That's not a pertinent part of the argument. We are dying. How much does it cost to die? Never goes away. But at this age, talking gender, sex, until 7, if you put on the skirt, you are a girl. By 5 to 7, children are really capable. The preliminary evidence is children are largely capable of knowing their own gender preferences. The evidence is largely anecdotal. We've mostly just gone around and asked adults when they knew that they were gay or trans or whichever construct we're concerned with at the moment. When did you know you were straight? And so on. God, for the straight people, it's harder because it's invisible. It's in the background, right? You never had to consider whether you might not be straight and then arrive at that as a conclusion, probably in all actuality. So that's why the focus on other kinds of questions. There's some nice study stuff in the book, and you should definitely read it. Just a couple of ways of knowing about this, but it's really young. We haven't cared about it. It's been largely invisible, largely ignored, one or both. We're just starting to think to ask this stuff kind of in modernity. But it is supported by theoretical frameworks, the Piaget thing, the so on. Okay. And like one of the questions we're left with is, do you feel strong and then assume you're male? I'm big and tall and have muscles. I must be a man. Or do you feel male and then assume you must therefore be strong? And as with so much else, it's probably the push me, pull you, bi-directional sort of give and take. And if you insist really strongly on one side of the thing, you're probably wrong. So let's talk schema. Is that Jesus? Do you see Jesus in that slice of toast? If you think about Jesus all the time, you'd probably see Jesus in the slice of toast. Jesus didn't look like that. Jesus was probably a short-ish, 50-ish at the time of his death, Middle Eastern guy, probably clean shaven. We had shaving technology at the time. People used it, probably with short hair, probably pretty stocky. He was working with his hands, working fishing nets and doing construction. Carpenter didn't mean literally a woodworker. The word translated into carpenter is like general contractor, whatever, stonemasonry or whatever needed doing. Right, so he probably had big, dirty, square hands and whatever. This is not an image of Jesus. You think about Jesus all the time, and you go to your white church and you see white Jesus, and you've seen all the movies, and you look at the toast. Maybe you should see Jason Momoa. Maybe that's Jason Momoa in a slice of toast. That would make a lot more sense. Jason Momoa, slice of toast. What do you think? Jason Momoa, slice of toast. What do you think? It's neither. It's a random thing that happened. It's just a low definition image. And in the absence of information, you tend to fill in that information, especially if it's important and has survival value. We're hardwired, I hate the term. We're predisposed to see faces, because not seeing a face when there is one is way worse than seeing a face when there isn't one. Okay. So if it looks like a face and it's low def, you see faces. In just the same way, gender becomes something of a filter for the world. All of your perceptions are passed through this filter, this cognitive filter, sorted out, by gender. Maybe it's even in your language. Some languages, French especially, I'm familiar with. Some things are masculine and some things are feminine. They don't have they don't have an it. They have always a he or a she. Why do we fight to the death? That's a archaic French leftover, because French would say le mort. It's male, right? There you go. So if getting sex is your top concern, then whoever you're looking at, you're evaluating on that basis, either as competition or potentially a target, for want of a better word. If being tough is your top concern, then who's a threat? Who could I beat? Who could I? Right? So there's an interesting eye gaze experiment. We can do it with a webcam now. We don't need fancy goggles or anything. You're looking at a screen, the webcam's looking at your eyes on the screen like that. And we're going to prime men to think about one-night stands. And we're going to prime different men to think about long-term relationships. Then we're going to have them sort of chat with a woman. And woman on the screen, we can, whole body view of a woman on the screen. And the men who are interested in LTR, long-term relationship, they are making eye contact and they're looking at the woman's face. Straight men, obviously, looking at her face. And symmetrical features and yada, 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 and eye contact, all that plays. Men thinking about one-night stands dwell more exclusively on the woman's body, and she has to do the eyes up here, Jack, kind of thing, right? This is a schema. What you're thinking about affects your perceptions and your behavior. So can you raise a child in a gender-neutral environment, a child with no gender schema? No. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. It's just not that important to me. It takes a village to raise children, and like everyone in your village is totally obsessed with sex and gender and traditional norms and values and habits. And I was raised to be masculine and I came out all right. Oh, Derek, if you only knew. If it's a project, it's a multi-generational one. The more that we get sex parity, the more that men and women earn the same for the same work and have the same opportunities and access to birth control and health insurance, and the more that we're just equal and women don't have to rely on men, the more that this gender stuff just isn't really relevant. And then the more that it just kind of eases up on us and we can do more work if we want to. Hey, I had dinner with my mom. It's probably 4 or 5 years ago now. And we don't talk. She's out there in the world somewhere. think she's in Florida, whatever, retired. We don't talk. Mostly because she's an alcoholic, and a lot because she split when I was 15. But that day we talked, and I brought up that uh, when I was little, she was actually pretty cruel. She hit me. She said nasty things, and she buggered off. Um, I asked her about it. I don't need reparations or whatever. I just asked about it. How do you feel after all this time? How do you feel about the job you did as a mom? And she said, "Well, my mom would bang my head into a brick wall, wouldn't she? My mum beat me into a concussion, so I did better with you, didn't I? You do better with your son, don't you?" That's not entirely satisfying. There isn't responsibility there. There's like little lack of self-awareness, a little lack of agency and responsibility. We still don't talk. But she's right. Statistically speaking, she's right. It's multi-generational. What it's about is learning from the past, your hard past, and making that decision to do better and be better. Everyone is affected by their past, and you can be affected consciously or unconsciously. That's all. The more you're affected consciously, the more you're in charge, probably the more that you make good decisions. Then there's a social psych thing, and man, it's complicated. I'm just not going to, you're going to look at the book and try and get through it. It's too much for me to explain in this space with this time. Um, the thing about social psych, though, is none of the other theories consider the circumstance. Circumstance is the largest predictor of human behavior. Individual traits and internal stuff and so on just aren't that predictive of human behavior. External demands are. So we're gonna play Monopoly. Did you know Monopoly started as the community game, and it was created by socialists who wanted to teach America about socialism, right? So there were two versions actually. That's why there's a community chest and chance. The community chest was all the good things, and that goes with socialism. And the chance box it goes with the capitalist game. Milton Bradley bought the game for like $50 or something awful, and they did away with the socialist version. There's only one way to play Monopoly now. But you could cooperate as you went around the board, or you could compete as you went around the board. But we're just going to play Monopoly, the one with the chance and the community chest, and we'll put free parking in there. You land on free parking, you get the money in the middle, house rule, and right. But we're going to play the game with two names. In version 1, it's called the community game. In version 2, it's called the capitalism game or the free market game or something. Okay, then we're going to gather together two groups of people. First, I'm going to go around and ask people for references to their most competitive friends. I want the most like type A personality, to the wall, all uber conservative friend that you know. Okay, and I'm going to get a list. And I'm going to go around and ask people for the most cooperative, do anything for you, community minded people you know. I'm going to get a list. We're going to play Monopoly. I'm going to divide my participants equally among the two variants of the game. We're going to play a ton of games. And I'm just going to observe the behavior of the people marked as competitive and the people marked as cooperative. Now, if there's an internal competitive trait that really matters, then the competitive people should be competitive when they're playing the community game and when they're playing the capitalist game, right? And the community people should be most communal, playing the communal game and the capitalist game. That's not what happens. Sorry. In the community game, everyone is communal. And in the capitalist game, everyone will cut you for a fake dollar bill. It doesn't matter. The demands of the circumstance totally override all of the internal principles and stuff that we carry around with us thinking it's so important. Circumstance trumps everything. And it's just impossible to imagine that circumstance doesn't trump gender roles and schema and rewards and punishment and on and on and on. So the social psych thing, this big, complicated matrix. Helgeson, I think here has overdone it. Like that would be great for graduate school for a 200 level college class. I think we can look at it. If you understand it, it's cool. Get this, circumstance matters. And that's it. We made it through chapter 5. So I'm going to stop the recording and go take a nap and catch you guys in class. Over and out.